The following content has been generated with artificial intelligence under minimal human supervision. The data presented may contain errors or inaccuracies. The opinions expressed in this content do not necessarily reflect the vision, position, or values of DigiAll. We recommend verifying critical information with additional sources before making decisions based on this content.
Welcome to DigiAll Tech News. Today is Monday, May 25th, 2026. I'm Kylie Brooks, and this is where technology becomes clear and engaging. Merlin Labs showed an AI system taking off, navigating and landing an experimental Cessna Caravan, with aviation now testing autonomy as a co-pilot, not a pilot replacement. Writer Wendy Liu is arguing that refusing AI tools can be a way to protect the difficult thinking that makes people capable, creative, and politically independent. Google Cloud says AI security has to start as a platform strategy, while Google itself is still dealing with messy real-world A.P.I key risks. Amazon's Wearables shows how useful personal AI summaries can be, and how quickly that usefulness turns into a privacy bargain. Pope Leo XIV is preparing the Catholic Church's first encyclical dedicated to AI, putting machine decision-making, transparency, and digital literacy on the Vatican's global agenda. Let's start in the cockpit, because this is exactly the kind of AI story that sounds futuristic until you look at the details. At Quonset State Airport in Rhode Island, Merlin Labs' Merlin pilot system handled takeoff, navigation, and landing on an experimental Cessna Caravan while a test pilot and CNN reporter, Pete Muntean, watched with their hands off the controls. The system also interpreted mock air traffic controller instructions and spoke back over the radio through a computerized female voice, with test pilot Matt Diamond using the command, authorize, to approve a course change. That matters because aviation is facing two pressures at once. Boeing estimates a need for more than 600,000 new pilots over the next 2 decades, and the US air traffic control system is under strain after recent close calls and accidents. Merlin has completed hundreds of test flights and has a US Air Force contract worth more than $100 million to adapt the technology for C-130 cargo planes, so the military may become an early proving ground. The important distinction is that Merlin is selling this as a co-pilot and trust-building step, not as an immediate push for pilotless passenger flights. The real question is how this moves from an impressive demonstration to something hardened enough for aviation's redundancy and certification culture, where confidence has to be earned slowly. Now, from machines learning to fly to humans deciding not to delegate the hard part. Wendy Liu, the San Francisco writer behind Abolish Silicon Valley, says she deliberately avoids tools like OpenAI's Codex and Anthropic's Claude Code for coding and writing because the struggle is not a bug in the process, it is the process. She connects that to how she learned to code in the mid-2000s, building websites from scratch in a basic text editor, reading documentation, breaking things, abandoning projects, and slowly developing judgment. Her critique of vibe coding and AI-generated slop is really a critique of dependency. When intelligence becomes a utility controlled by opaque companies, convenience can start to look like a loss of agency. She also points to a broader boom around data centers, layoffs justified by AI investment, pressure on employees to maximize tool use, and even people turning to chatbots for deeply personal tasks. What makes the argument sharper is that she is not pretending there are no trade-offs. She admits she is less efficient than peers who embrace the tools and may be walking away from money in the AI startup economy. But her challenge is worth sitting with. If young people learn that technology is a black box that answers for them, who is left with the patience and confidence to shape it? Here's the key context on AI security. The advice is getting very clear, but the infrastructure is still catching up. Francis D'Souza, Chief Operating Officer of Google Cloud, told a Los Angeles audience that companies cannot bolt security on after employees have already adopted AI tools in the shadows. His line was blunt. There is no AI strategy without a data strategy and a security strategy. The stakes are not abstract. He said the average time from a breach to the next stage of an attack has dropped from 8 hours to 22 seconds, and the attack surface now includes models, prompts, training data pipelines, and agents. In plain English, an agent that can search across a company might also rediscover an old SharePoint server with stale access controls. The tension is that even Google is navigating this in real time. Developers have reported unauthorized Gemini A.P.I. use that created five-figure bills in minutes after keys originally issued for Google Maps were expanded in scope, including one case of $10,138 in roughly 30 minutes and another of about 17,000 Australian dollars. Google issued refunds in those reported cases, but its automatic billing tier upgrades and some key revocation delays remain part of the risk picture. Aikido found that deleted compromised keys could remain usable for up to 23 minutes in some cases, while newer service account and AQ prefixed credentials revoked much faster. So yes, AI, native, agentic defense may be where security is headed. But right now, the practical lesson for leaders is simpler. Inventory your keys, permissions, data, and agents before they inventory you. Amazon's Be Wearable is a good reminder that consumer AI often becomes most compelling when it is also most intimate. TechCrunch senior writer Lucas Ropek tested the wrist device, which Amazon acquired in July 2025, and found real utility in professional settings. Press a button, watch for the flashing green light, record a conversation, and the mobile app can produce transcripts and readable summaries. On a business phone call, that meant he could review the important parts later without replaying the entire audio. The tool also synced with calendars for reminders and alerts, and it handled one surprisingly tricky test by labeling a movie night conversation as Tarantino film scene analysis instead of treating film dialogue as real life. But here is the trade-off. The more useful Bee becomes, the more it wants to know. Its value depends on broad permissions such as location, photos, contacts, calendar, notifications, and optional health data like sleep or heart rate, with accumulated personal data stored in the cloud. Amazon points to encryption, third-party audits, and continuous monitoring, but the company also has a history of data security incidents, which makes trust a real product feature, not a footnote. The reviewer found the professional use case intriguing and the personal life use case uncomfortable, and that feels like the honest dividing line. A wearable assistant that remembers for you can be genuinely helpful. It can also turn your day into a searchable archive you may not want to create. And finally, the Vatican is stepping directly into the AI governance debate. Pope Leo XIV, the first US-born pontiff and elected 1 year ago, is set to personally present Magnificat Humanitas, the Catholic Church's first encyclical dedicated to artificial intelligence. The document was signed on May 15th and is scheduled to be unveiled at the Vatican on May 26th, alongside senior Holy See officials and AI experts, including Anthropic co-founder Dario Amodei. The themes are big, but they are not vague. The danger of delegating life and death decisions to machines. What Leo has called the gradual replacement of reality by simulation. The lack of transparency in chatbots. And environmental damage tied to the race for rare earth elements used in electronics. The encyclical also calls for digital literacy, so people understand how algorithms shape what they see, believe, and fear. This matters because the Church is trying to place AI inside a long tradition of social teaching about labor, power, and human dignity, with direct echoes of the industrial era concerns addressed by Leo XIII in Rerum Novarum. The UN has cited projections that AI could reach $4.8 trillion in value by 2033, while concentrating profits among relatively few players, so the moral question is also an economic one. The influence of this document will depend on how governments, companies, and civil society respond after the text is public. But as a signal, it is clear. AI is no longer just a product category. It is becoming a civilization-level ethical argument. Today's through line is trust under pressure. AI in aircraft, in our thinking, in corporate security, on our wrists, and in global moral debate. The useful question is not whether the technology is powerful. It is who gets to decide when it is ready, what it is allowed to remember, and which human responsibilities should never be automated away. Thank you for staying informed with DigiAll Tech News. We'll be back with more updates as they develop.